What's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and today we're going to be looking at some last-minute potential changes Blizzard could make to Warlock, Aff, Demo, Destro, and the class tree to maybe help bring it up a little bit tuning-wise and maybe get it in a bit of a better spot for Liberation of Undermine and 11.1 Mythic Plus and Season 2 starting. Now, I want to say there are two very important things before we get too far in this video. Number one, I am watching a Sam Sulik video right now, just to point that out. Number two, I don't know why this is showing KCO, but I promise this is a link to my channel in this feedback doc if you want it. If you want the link to the feedback document, there's a link down below. I made this today. I might develop it a bit more over the next few days, but let's be honest, we're pretty close to the patch dropping, and we'll see where it goes. But I think I want to drive home here. It is very important. I just want to note, this is not going to be core talent changes for the most part. This is not going to be we get Purple Infernal back, or they add Flame Rift into the class tree or Spec Tree for Destro. It's too late for that. This is going to be numerical tuning to talents and or general abilities that can bring up Aff, Demo, Destro, and or the class tree, and helps maybe getting into a bit of a better spot heading into patch 11.1. So off the bat here, starting off the destruction. Now there's four things. Four that I want to hit on for Destro feedback wise. I think this is a very good Hellcaller raid coming up. Lock's in an odd spot in Liberation of Undermine because it's a good lock raid for Destro, good cleave, good Hellcaller profile. Even for Aff, a couple fights you might end up playing it there. But I feel like our overall tuning is just not up to par with other classes. Now, having a damage profile that's strong in the raid is great. Having a damage profile that's good in plus is also great. But in the end, if your damage is not where it needs to be, it's still going to be a little subpar. So this is going to be an attempt to bring all those up. Number one, this I guess technically is a little bit of a talent change, but it's a very simple one. We're not overhauling talents a whole lot. Adding Crushing Chaos to, or adding Shadowburn to Crushing Chaos. There's been plenty of times on many fights where I want to play Crushing Chaos. It is the highest simming target or talent in single target, even over Reign of Chaos by I think like 15-20k. From what I've heard, even if you don't cast like 3 Chaos Bolts out of the Reign of Chaos or out of the Crushing Chaos stacks, it's still about the same as playing Reign of Chaos from what I've heard. But if you've popped an Infernal at the end of a fight and you're playing Shadowburn talents with Fiendish Cruelty, it feels really bad watching your Crushing Chaos stacks expire or not be used when the fight ends or the window closes because you're spamming Shadowburn a bunch. Shadowburn's still good. We should add Shadowburn to Crushing Chaos as a damage amp, so it's Chaos Bolt or Rain of Fire or Shadowburn. Be a huge increase of quality of life, just would play much better, more fluently, and would make Crushing Chaos, probably the de facto choice in both settings, which it probably should already be, but I digress. Number two, Chaos Bolt and or improved Chaos Bolt, which is right here, need buffs. At this point, casting Rain of Fire in single target is currently our best option. Now, the highest simming Destro build in 11.1 for a single target is a Hellcaller Rain of Fire build. We looked at it a few days ago. It's actually this build right here, funny enough. This is our highest simming build in single target heading into 11.1 in Liberation of Undermine. Now, it's only ahead of other Chaos Bolt based Destro builds by about 10 to 12k. Things have changed a bit with Destro. You can just cast Infernal, or you can cast Rain of Fire at your main target with this new ability here. You don't need the Cursor macro. Inferno is the same. 2-shard Rain of Fires. Demon Fire Infusion is good. It's bugged. We'll get to that in a minute here. But a lot of this build just focuses around spending shards and casting Incinerates, casting other spells, casting Rain of Fires just faster than Chaos Bolt's cast time to fuel more rituals, fuel more stacks, more PO stacks, just more buffs that will then, snowball in a sense, right? Buffing Chaos Bolt, which probably needs to happen in the first place. It could just straight up be baseline Chaos Bolt by 10%, 15%, whatever, and or buffing improved Chaos Bolt would, one, make us take improved Chaos Bolt and shift that build back to being number one, which it should be in single target, and also make it so we're back to having what old Destro felt like in a sense, where Chaos Bolt actually hit hard. At this point, Chaos Bolt and Incinerate are basically here, almost neck and neck. I feel like that shouldn't be the case for Destro. Number three, Dimension Rift could use buffs. If you're looking to buff underperforming talents, Dimension Ripper and Rift, the proc rate seems very low on Ripper. The higher you go with more and more targets, it does scale, and it actually becomes sort of strong on the higher end, like in a large pull, Kata and things like that. Rift on its own would be a nice button to have, a short cooldown. You hit it on the move and all that, outside of Shadowburn, but the damage is just very subpar, even if you're playing unstable Rifts. And for having to commit, at times, 2 talent points to this, it feels like it's pretty lacking. We could definitely buff this, increase the damage, and whether you play Rifts or not in single target, Definitely make it a little better. The last thing here for destruction, indiscriminate flames. This is right here, sort of a semi-forgotten talent. I don't even think of it much either for Destro. Increases the damage of your next Chaos Bolt by 5% and increases the crit strike chance of your next Incinerate or Soulfire by 35. Now, Soulfire hits really hard. It's a proc, but it hits really hard. It is the de facto spell you want to buff with Indiscriminate Flames and Backdraft if you can, if it procs. If it doesn't, it's whatever. Incinerate hits for about as hard as a Chaos Bolt, a bit less, but if you can drastically increase the crit strike chance of Incinerate by buffing it with Backdraft, it's still better than buffing a Chaos Bolt due to the subpar 5% modifier. If you're looking to buff talents to make things a little better, Indiscriminate Flames, you could double this to 10% for Chaos Bolt, maybe even higher than 10% to bring this on par, if not, maybe even a bit ahead of what Incinerate and Soulfire gain from Indiscriminate Flames. Now, moving on, I believe we have Affliction next for feedback here. Actually, Demonology. Let me change this up. So we have Demonology next. There's not a whole lot of points here that I really want to hit on for Demonology. There's obviously more things you can do with like larger talent changes and all that. If you want to overhaul certain things, Blizz did mention at some point, Nether Portal will come back maybe in a different form, but this is more going to be tuning things. Not much for Demonology, but the right side talents capstones are undertuned. I think this is 2 words. I don't know, either way. Referencing like improved demonic tactics, demonic brutality, mutable hatred, and guillotine. I know that guillotine, this is spelled wrong, I got it. I know that guillotine has been played in certain spots. It's played at times on Brood Twister, at times it's played in mass AoE, where you can like preemptively throw the guillotine down, like a big on-demand pulsing AoE, but it's still not incredibly strong. The main focal point here is immutable hatred, is tactics, is brutality. It feels like these are all just sort of over here as placeholders in the tree, and they're just not tuned very well. I've simmed multiple combinations of these talents over the course of 11.0, alpha, beta. They're behind by 20, 30, 40k in DPS. It might be a bit less now. I think they were tuned a little bit towards the end of beta, but still, they need some attention if we want them to be competitive at certain points. They are more passive comparatively, like weaving dooms and things. But in the end, with our demonic core economy changing a bit, over the course of alpha and beta, having a lot of core economy removed, hatred wasn't really buffed a whole lot. Now, I will say core economy is better in 11.1. You've got a lot more cores, guaranteed dogs, tier set giving a core, Doom giving a core now as well, or having a chance to, I guess it does give a core, never expire a chance. But yeah, either way, improved core economy. Hatred's probably a little better, but still needs more tuning. 60k damage is nothing. And as far as is concerned, also pretty mediocre. I think for consistency, having Houndmaster's Gambit buff your tier set would be is probably pretty important. So looking at tier sets like for Affliction, for example, you have things like Tormented Crescendo, you have Focus Malignancy, you have other spells that buff, Unstable Affliction. They've also been changed to buff the Unstable Afflictions from your tier set proccing for Affliction. Destro, to a similar extent, has CDF bolts. Not a whole lot of interactions there, but still, the talents that work with like Unstable Affliction and or presumably CDF and things would and or do work with those talents from the tier set. Now, for Demonology, your tier set is based around having a demonic a Dreadstalker spawn in. A greater Dreadstalker does damage, it triggers your main dogs, they chomp, do damage, and all that. And I think, like, I shouldn't say forgetting, but leaving out Houndmaster's Gambit, although it is a very large buff to your Dreadstalkers, but having everything else work with dogs, like Flame Touch does work, Wicked Maw does work, Dread Lash does work, and it applies Wicked Maw if you hand the Gul'dan. What else works here? I believe, this Dread Calling works. Like your greater Dreadstalker, if it procs, actually consumes Dread Calling stacks and doesn't even leave them for your smaller dogs. Those all work together. So I think for a general consistency standpoint, and like to not even be confusing to players that might not be playing Demonology as their main or whatever, adding Gambit to work with the tier set for consistency, for just clarity, would be is pretty important. It would be a damage increase, yes. Demonology looks sort of mid next tier anyways in single target. There's only one boss. Next tier is also Patrick based, but regardless, adding Houndmaster's Gambit to Demo's tier set to work, I think is pretty important for looking at fixing that and or doing that. The last thing here is Grimoire Felguard. It's still dying a bunch in combat. I don't believe the bug's been fixed yet. We should probably just make this... we need to fix that bug, because it is better in single target, but players aren't really playing it as much because it dies to a lot of abilities, whether it's an M+ or rating alike. I'll look down and times my Grimoire's just dead. That needs to be looked at and fixed before this raid. Now, moving on to Affliction here, I also want to drive home... I want to drive home once again that this is not a we're going to overhaul the spec kind of video. We're past that. We're at a point... I'm going to bump this down a bit. We're at a point where we need feedback based on raw talent tuning, based on damage. What's good, what's bad, and all of that to try and get specs up to par, damage-wise, you know, across the board. Now, when it comes to Affliction, we got a handful of things here. This is Singularity. I know it's not a talent overhaul, but it is a bit of like this could change it with relative ease. Singularity's duration is reduced by the amount of haste that you have in your character. For example, Singularity here is 13.1 second duration. If I get more haste, it'll be 13 or 12.9 or 12.8. If I take off haste here, it'll be higher. It'll be 13.5, something like that. Find some haste gear here. Take this off. It is now, let me see, 13.3. So more haste you have, the shorter your Singularity ticks. You don't lose ticks of Singularity, but you lose duration of Singularity. Now the problem with that is the talent below it, Infirmity, which you play whenever you're playing Singularity, causes enemies damaged by PS to take 10% increased damage for its duration. The duration being shorter from your haste is sort of a non-bow. It's a non-combo. Now, Infirmity is still good. Singularity is still good. But it would be more beneficial if we were able to remove the haste reduction part of Singularity and just make it, hey, 15-second baseline duration. It ticks for that long. You get more Infirmity value. It feels like the reduced duration doesn't work well with Rapture in general either. You just want to have a longer set of dots so you can Rapture more for that damage increase when you have multiple dots active. So a bit of awkwardness there. Maybe it could be changed. We'll see, but wanted to point that out. The big thing with AF, I think, is capstones. Capstones and Unstable Affliction. So capstones like Oblivion, Xavius' Gambit, Perpetual Instability, Relinquished, even things like Ravenous Afflictions at times for Hellcaller, or even like Malefic Touch at certain points, they just feel a bit undertuned. I mean, we're playing Dark Harvest in single target. This is obviously a cleave-based talent, for the most part designed to probably be one, yet you're playing this over things like Xavius' Gambit, over things like Oblivion, or, you know, Ravenous for Hellcaller, or Relinquished. These talents need a bit of attention. Now, we talked about this becoming Cascading Calamity during PTR. Didn't happen. Something like that is what it is. To a similar extent, I think Oblivion also has a lot of potential to be a really cool and impactful spell by expanding what it does. Maybe it extends dots when you channel it. Maybe remove the shard cost or reduce the shard cost. Maybe have it do more damage or something. You know, some ways you can build upon Oblivion to fit AF's toolkit better. Dot extension, dot application, maybe a Malefic Grasp effect when you're channeling it, your dots flare up and tick twice as often. A lot of potential with Oblivion here. But unfortunately, didn't really happen this PTR. Regardless, though, if you want Oblivion to be competitive, we need to buff Xavius' Gambit and also buff Oblivion. It might not be as cool thematically as what it could be, but in general, if it's good and tuned, you know, in a proper manner or whatever, right, you'll still play it. To a similar extent, Xavius' Gambit, Unstable Afflictions, like, I think 7.5 to 8% of our overall, like, breakdown in single target. It's not a whole lot. And for being our dot, that's, you know, limit 1, this is your main dot. You can't have more than one active unless your tier set procs. It feels like it should be higher, 12%, 13%. If you buff baseline UA, you in a sense buff Xavius' Gambit. If you just buff Gambit and not buff UA as well, either way. But I think we need to find some way to catapult, increase UA's damage, because there's also a problem as well with Affliction's tier set. Now, AF's tier set does have a chance to spread multiple UAs, which is very cool. It's thematic and a throwback to old Unstable Affliction AF, where you had the option to spread UAs with shards. But unfortunately, you get the same Unstable Affliction modifier in single target that you do AoE, and it's a little subpar. Now, if these mobs do die with the spread UA on them, they do give shards. It does now indeed work with Malignancy. It does work with Crescendo. If you drain any UA target, that works. This works. But it feels like there should be an increase to the damage that Unstable Affliction does from your tier set if it procs in single target, similar to Demonology in S3 and S4 of Dragonflight, where if your Doomguard proc, it was hitting one mob, it did I don't know, a million damage per Shadow Bolt, whatever it did. If it procced an AoE, it would volley Shadow Bolts, but do 200k per Shadow Bolt. Something along those lines, where if it spreads to 2 targets or 3 targets, maybe it's like, I put 100 here percent damage increase. If it's like 4 targets, if it is applied to all of them, right, at 75. But if it goes on 1 target, it's like 150, 200, even like 100. But currently, the UA that goes out from the tier set, it's random. Besides whenever you Dark Glare, every 2 minutes. Jackpot seems to be about 1 RPPM. The damage is not exceptionally high, and it's likely one of the lower tier bonuses when it comes to tuning probably most classes, 3 or 4 piece. Thematically, it's cool in a sense. I wish we just had an ability to spread UA in general, but I think it needs to be looked at and likely buffed. You can also just, buff UA on its own, as long as it affects this UA, which it should. A lot of ways to address this. But it feels like AF's profile is a little, I guess AF in general, is a little lacking damage-wise. Preliminary sims, I've seen there around 2.1, which probably have a lot more to gain with optimizing gear and things. It wasn't really optimized. I believe that Affliction's our lowest single target spec, followed by Demo and Destro on top. But even Destro is pretty far behind most classes from what I've seen in single target sims. So we will see where that goes. A couple things here I want to hit on for just class tree stuff. Move this over here. So a couple of things. One thing we talked about during beta a lot was Fiendish Stride being greatly reduced from what it was in Dragonflight. It was a little OP in Dragonflight, but I wouldn't mind seeing the actual damage reduction on this increased, maybe to like 20%, something like that. It used to be a lot higher. It feels almost negligible now at this point, and or increase the movement speed by another 10% roughly. It feels like it's not really that impactful in a sense. I don't even play it half the time when I need more talents for certain fights and things. The lot class tree in general is a bit bloated with a handful of 2-point talents, like 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, essentially 2 right here. But that's more of a 11.15 or 11.2 thing, maybe a bit of an overhaul there. But Stride can be looked at for a bit of a damage reduction buff and or speed increase possibly. And the last thing here is Soul Conduit. Now, Soul Conduit was increased to 10%, I believe, for AF Destro, I think, during PT or during beta. It might have just been 10 across the board. But I think you can make this 10% for AF and Destro. Maybe even 15 for AF, or a bit higher, based on their shard generation and how they spend shards. For example, AF generates shards via Agony Ticks, or if a mob dies with UA on it, or Drain Soul, right? Destro generates shards via Incinerate cast, Immolate Ticks, Incinerate, so on and so forth. Demonology is whenever you cast Shadow Bolt. Demonology generates shards the fastest, or your Demon Bolt, right? The fastest out of all 3 specs here. So making or leaving Demonology at 5% chance, refund per shard spent whenever you cast a 3-shard Handling Roldan, I think makes sense, right? But Affliction, whenever you Rapture, making it 10%, or Destruction, making it 10%, so on and so forth, whenever you spend shards through Chaos Bolt or Malefic Rapture, I think fits the way those specs spend shards, and the profiles they have much better than 5%. 5% is almost negligible. I think I look at logs, of course, like a 5-minute fight, I got like 3 shards back from Soul Conduit, maybe for AF. It's pretty so... I also want to make a really quick bug section, mostly hitting on things with Wither and Destro stuff, but I already pointed out a couple things here. Grimoire Felguard's dying, still a bunch of attacks. Talked about it already in the Demo section. I moved it down here, but I need to look at. Other thing is Demon Fire Infusion for Destruction is proccing at a 25% proc chance for Hellcaller with Wither, not 4%. With that being the case, it is the better option over CDF, and it's pretty good, obviously, right? You're proccing at a 1 in 4 chance versus 1 in whatever 4% is, right? Obviously, it needs to be fixed to where it's the same, with Immolate being 4 and Wither being 4, but then once that's fixed, likely needs to be bumped up a bit to like 10, 12%, whatever the proc chance is, it's relevant and worthwhile. At 4%, it's not good at all. If you fix the bug, leverage them out, and then bump them up to like 10, 12, whatever the number should be. I don't know exactly. It will then become hopefully relevant and a decent option against CDF. Now, a couple other bugs here with Wither. This is both for Affliction and Destruction here. Wither is not pandemic. Let me rephrase that. Wither pandemics if the mob that has Wither on it has essentially stacks of Wither. So, like, for example, we can do this here. Here's Wither. I'm going to cast Wither again. Baseline duration is 20 seconds. Wither. It doesn't pandemic. But if I pop Malevolence to give it stacks and then go Wither, it then Pandemics. That's a big bug that really needs to be looked at and fixed, because that's going to make a big difference in combat for Wither extensions with CDF, Wither durations, a lot of things. That's a pretty impactful issue that needs to be looked at. Second thing here is that Wither does not apply through Havoc when targets are 40 yards or more apart. So for example, Wither is here, whatever. I'll Havoc this. So Havoc is active over here. I will run over here, put up Wither over here. So this mob right here. Have a Wither is there. There is no Wither over here. I'll even cast a Soulfire here and watch it Havoc to both of them. Bang. There's Wither there in that mob. It launched over here. No Wither. That also needs to be fixed and looked at, because there's a handful of fights this tier, like Cauldron of Carnage. Other fights in general that are spread reverb at times. There's some pretty spread cleave there that you want to Havoc Soulfires, you want to Havoc Withers and things, but if it's not working properly, it becomes very clunky having to go Wither on two different mobs versus just cleaving it, casting Havoc, applying it to both, and going from there. Now, one bug I forgot to add here as well for Affliction, which I'll probably add to this video after yapping here, is that it's sort of a bug or an oversight, I guess, when it comes to Affliction and Vile Taint in Mythic Plus. If you have more than 8 targets, Vile Taint applies to 8 targets, applies Agony to 8. It needs to prioritize your Unstable Affliction target, or at least the target that you're targeting somehow. Maybe you make it work with Unstable Affliction, but there's like 10 mobs here. Let's say this is my main target here for whatever reason, and I cast Vile Taint on 10 mobs. There's a chance that Agony will not apply to this target here, my main target, which is very annoying. It's less cleave or less damage, through Rapture, because you have UA on the target, less malignancy value, less Rapture value. It needs to be smart and apply to your UA target, your haunt target, or whatever. Once again, a lot of issues with AF and quality of life, but this is an easy one, or a bug probably that can be looked at for 11.1. I wanted to point these things out today. I'm not sure if it's going to happen. There's been a lot of class tuning happening for other classes and things, but I want to do a bit of like a Hail Mary here. Hopefully this works out. I think Lock's in a really odd spot this tier. It's hard to drive this point home, because I think Warlock's profile, like I said in the video last time, Hellcaller is the best spec this raid. I know it's not a spec, but it is. Hellcaller is the best spec this raid. Wither is very good. We haven't seen a raid in a long time where you have this many like non-patchwork, non-stacked cleave bosses. We've seen Demonology being very good in these raids for a long time because of their stacked cleave profile. Patchwork damage, Implosion cleave, dogs, Dreadsuckers, Hand of Gul'dan, Demonic Strength, Felguard cleave, right? This raid doesn't have a whole lot of that. Dexy spawns adds across the room. They stack eventually, but they're getting cleaved down. Cauldron, mass spread cleave. Rick Reverb, adds can spawn onto the boss, but they spawn in the back of the room sometimes. You need to cleave those down as range, right? Sticks, once again, ads spawn everywhere. And you're cleaving bombs that are not under the boss to break the effect, the shield on the mob that's on top of the bomb, right? Sprocket Monger is the only patchwork boss's raid. And if Demonology is the best there, whatever's best in single target, you'll play it. Very likely, right? Probably just Destro fight, because Destro's looking to be the highest in single target, and Shadowburn. Then you have One Arm Bandit. Once again, spawning ads with the boss here, and an ad spawns here, here, and here around the room. Havoc cleave, Hellcar cleave. Very, very strong. Bugsy, you're moving often. There's ads on different sides of the room you can cleave down. Havoc is good here for LOS on mobs inside the cages or outside the cages. And Galliwix sounds like a wild ride. There's ads everywhere. It sounds very, very cool. And on Mythic, we're not even sure what happens in the final phase, because, well, basically stage 1 for Mythic, but on Arsenal is stage 3 for Heroic. So it could have a hidden phase, not really sure, but Hellcaller is the best spec this raid tier. Hellcaller favors Destro more than AF. Destro is the best dot spec the Warlock has right now, which is crazy, but that's how Wither works with Shadowburn, Rain of Fire, and single target, Black and Soul Stacks, and all that. You might play AF on a few fights this tier, a couple, like maybe Cauldron or Carnage, possibly One Arm Bandit, but likely more Destro stuff, right? Demonology's profile does not excel here as much. We've seen in Aberrus or Myrtil or even Nerva Palace because of that not having much stack cleave, not being best in single target, and just building upon that, right? But regardless, I think Locke, whether you're playing Destro or Demo or AF, is a bit lacking when it comes to raw damage. Rain of Fire shouldn't be our best spender in single target for Destro, and thankfully there's some changes that can be made, buff Chaos Bolt, fix Indiscriminate Flames, so on and so forth, that can bring that up a good bit. And and, you know, hopefully just make things a bit more on par where other classes are in 11.1. So like always, thank you for watching, guys. Hopefully the video helped clarify on where Locke's at currently on 11.1 PTR with the last, I guess, week or so before the patch actually hits. This patch has flown by. I am surprised it's coming out in 11 days. I am not ready for it, but I'm excited for it. Hopefully you guys are too. If you guys would like any wiki warriors or add-ons, profiles, whatever you saw in the video, or link to the feedback doc down below and all up here, that as well. And also a huge thank you to, like always, my supporters on Patreon. Thank you all a million times for all support. Like always, I greatly appreciate it. Heads up, the 11.1 Warlock PTR spreadsheet is live on Patreon. If you like early access to that for the tier 3 Veilguard rank or higher, but it's always public before the patch was live for free and all that kind of stuff. Also, to a similar extent, the central week warrior and things, other week warriors will be getting fixed and updated over the next few days, so keep an eye out for that in the Discord, and I'll make a video on it too, I'm sure, for the patch. But yeah, it's close. I'm ready. I'm excited. Everything's at once this patch. No heroic week. It's all heroic mythic at the same time. It's gonna be a wild ride, but I'm excited. Hopefully y'all are too. If you like the video, hit the like and sub button below. Helps out a ton. I'll catch y'all again soon on stream. Peace.